Today's webinar is about what to ask yourself if you're not getting job offers or the job offers you want. And depending on the economy, or things that you're maybe doing in your search, you may not be getting the traction that you want. And, I certainly talk about a lot of ways to get traction, but this particular, talk today will be about how to get traction, what to do if you're not getting offers that you want, whether or not you should take those offers, what to do if you're unemployed, and, really some kind of important stuff that, you really should be thinking about, when you're not, getting the traction you want. Because, the truth is, no one is 100% satisfied in most cases with their job search. When the economy is really good, things can, go well, but when it's not as good, people don't do as well. And I mean, I can tell you from experience that, in our placement firm, and we have, lots of people interviewing every day, making placements every day, multiple placements many days. And, there's things that we do with our candidates, and there's things, that you can do on your own that you don't need someone like my help that will actually get you really awesome results. So, it is very common for law students, attorneys, and others to actually get job offers that they're unhappy about. If you're, looking for a job right now, that, you're going to get a job at some point, but you may not actually get the job you want. And, and some people, they actually give up on the practice of law when they're not getting the job offers they want, which is very upsetting to me. Or they take jobs that aren't even, related to the practice of law. I mean, I had someone that applied, to work as a recruiter here, or a legal placement person, last, week. And so I interviewed them today, and the person had gone to an Ivy League law school and was clerking for a federal circuit judge, and had worked in a top law firm for 1 or 2 years in a major city before that, and hadn't been able to find a job, which is just absolutely insane. And so the person decided they wanted to go into legal placement, and I, very quickly, within 5 or 10 minutes, told them that was absolutely ridiculous. You shouldn't be doing something that you don't want to do, and especially with your background. I mean, you should be able to find a job. And that person's particular problem, which I'll discuss today in terms of mistakes that people make, was they were only looking at one market, and then they were limiting themselves on types of firms that they were applying to, and and looking at kind of a small to mid-sized market on top of it. So, people should not give up in the practice of law, and especially when they're not finding the jobs that they want. I see people from the worst law schools, even unaccredited law schools, get good jobs, and you can do it too. It's not really that difficult if you follow certain rules. I'm going to tell you today, what you need to do. It's just it's something that I hate seeing. Because when you take a job you don't want, you're not going to reach your full potential. You're going to be unhappy. The employer that hires you is going to be miserable. They're going to put a lot of time into training you. You're going to disrupt the people that work there because you're going to be unhappy, and it's just going to create a lot of tension. And in many cases, if I were to hire, for example, that clerk, I would be making a huge mistake. But but employers make that mistake all the time. I mean, you go into places and you may convince someone that you really want the job, and they're going to hire you, and you're going to be looking for a job and out the door and never really committing. And unfortunately, that's the path that a lot of people take with their careers. They take positions they don't want. They don't commit to the job. They don't do the best they can. They're unhappy. The employer's unhappy with them. Then they think they don't like the practice of law. So it's very important that these skills that I'm talking about are really fully realized. And I see so many mistakes that people make. A significant percentage of people are unhappy in the practice of law because they're doing, their job searches incorrectly. They're not finding all the opportunities they're capable of and more. So the first question you need to ask yourself, if you're not getting the jobs you want, and if you're not, finding the opportunities you want, is whether or not you've done everything you possibly can to get job offers. And that's a very important question because a lot of people, really severely undermarket themselves, in their job search. And everybody's capable of, getting a job, and regardless of the economy. It doesn't matter what the economy is. I have, everyone says corporate's dead right now, but yet I have corporate people interviewing in, markets. And, it's just that the market is, going to be determined by, how well the jobs you get by how much you're marketing yourself or how much you're allowing a recruiter, to market you. And, a lot of times, if you're, getting jobs you don't want. I mean, a lot of people actually, are angry, when they get a job that pays them less than they feel, that they should be making, or they sometimes, they're upset, when they don't get the jobs that they want to get a lot of traction. So you definitely need to learn, some skills about what you need to do, and a mindset to get the positions you want, because it makes absolutely no sense if you're not getting job offers, and it also makes no sense if you're not getting the types of jobs that you want. So the first thing is, you need to be applying to enough places and enough markets. The country is huge, and there's lots and lots of markets, you can be looking for jobs in. If you're, in a major city, there's tons and tons of, places. And it's really, in my opinion, a crisis. I mean, you need to be, really marketing yourself in your search by looking at lots of markets and learning some job search skills I'm going to talk to you about today. Many people, undermarket themselves, and they have these, careers that are, unsatisfying for them. I mean, they take jobs that they're unhappy with, or they stay in jobs that they're unhappy with. They, don't find positions at all many times, or, and they believe that that's all they can get because they had a bad experience, and they have to hold on to that job, and they can't lose it, no matter what. And it's a mindset. I remember, I mean, it's a funny story, but it's not really that funny. I grew up in a background that, with my mother that was, I don't know if I would call it working class, but it wasn't, she came out of an environment where, it was very important for people to hold on to their job and not lose their job. And I had this awful, terrible job as a garbage man, working for the city. It was a different time and place, but, I literally, was working with a guy that was carrying a weapon. One time, threatened to, slash my throat. And, I told my supervisor about it, and they didn't care. I mean, it was this the kind of job I had. And I was talking to my mom about it, and she was, hysterical. Like, you can't, make trouble. You don't want to lose your job. And, so a lot of people come from the idea that if you lose your job or something, or you don't have a job, it's a bad thing. So they stay with these jobs they shouldn't stay with. And, most people, when they're looking for a job, they think that they've done everything right. I mean, I encounter, attorneys all day, that think that they know exactly what to do. I send them, lots of, places that could be good fits for them, and they don't, think it's too many, or they don't know that they're the right fit, or they, and then consequently they end up, stuck in bad situations, and or with no job at all. So really the most important thing, I mean, you need to be applying to lots of places. And if you're an attorney, a practicing attorney or a law student, a lot of people are very controlling. I mean, they want to research every single employer that they talk to. They want to, read online reviews and get all sorts of information. And the thing is most law firms, they consist of practice groups, and you may be working with one or two people in that practice group, and there's all sorts of, different groups of people inside of a law firm. So you can't really, with a law firm or any employer, you can't really get a sense of what it's like to work there unless you go and you interview and you figure out who you're going to be working with, and you get a real good sense of it. And you really shouldn't be undermarketing yourself. Now, I'm not saying that that a bankruptcy attorney, for example, that's doing corporate bankruptcy should go out and apply to consumer bankruptcy, like high volume consumer bankruptcy firms, or that a commercial litigator in a major law firm should suddenly apply to do personal injury. But what I am saying is talking to people that are in the practice area that you want to do and the markets you want to do, that are firms that you can potentially see yourself work at, are important because they will lead to opportunities. Every time you go out and interview, every time you talk to a new place, every time you decide to apply to a new place, you're really giving yourself a new opportunity to find places that you normally may not. And it's huge. I mean, it changes lives and it changes careers, and it's only one application. So you need to, you don't want to be so controlling, about the number of places, that you're applying. I mean, I see attorneys and I work with them all the time that, in some cases they've been looking for a job for months, in some cases even years, using a legal recruiter. And the legal recruiter may only work with a couple, when I say a couple, probably, 20, 30, maybe a few more large law firms, and we'll only send them to a few big firms that have openings. And, they're only aware of opportunities at large law firms. And so, if you're an attorney at a large law firm and your recruiter is only sending you to large law firms and you're happy with a large law firm, you're really only going to get exposed to places that are just like where you're at. And because you're exposed to places that are just like where you're at, that's going to kind of limit you, and it's going to, you're going to go into a situation where you're unhappy again. So, it may make sense for you to look at different types of places, or even other large law firms, that don't have openings sometimes can be a good fit, and maybe there's good people there, you could be working with. So when I represent someone, and this is something you should do with yourself as well, I mean, I do everything I possibly can to make them look at more firms and markets and get exposed to as many jobs and as many, opportunities as they possibly can. Because, you're not going to, you have to, really reach out and find as many places as you possibly can when you're looking for a job. Because and I will take questions, after this. I noticed someone just was asking questions, but I will, take questions after we're done with this. Excuse me. Okay, so, every day, lots of our people that I work with, I mean, lots of them, I mean, several, get candidates, or candidates get interviews with law firms that don't have openings. And, the majority of placements that I make are for firms that don't even have openings. And these are at firms in large markets, small markets. There are small firms, large firms, and many legal markets. So you can't take the gospel of what you're seeing in the market, meaning that a firm must have an opening to hire me. You have to realize that, that's just not what happens. And many times, by looking at smaller markets, even if there are openings, you can find things that you normally wouldn't. So an example is, like, right now I'm working with a tax attorney in New York City, and the person's working for an accounting firm. And for the most part, I mean, attorneys coming from accounting firms are not marketable to law firms. Now, that's not always, but the issue is there's not a lot of tax openings. And when there are tax openings in law firms almost always, hire people from other law firms because they have similar training. It's more competitive to get a job at a law firm, and so there's just a certain type of people they're looking for. So this attorney, doesn't, want to work, in a accounting firm anymore. He wants to work in a law firm, and most recruiters would not work with this person because he wants to work in a law firm. He doesn't have any law firm experience, and he's coming, and there's just no openings. So I, worked with this person, and I was able to get them out to firms and in smaller markets. And he's interviewing with a firm in Nebraska. Now, Nebraska may not be the place you want to live, but this person does not mind living in a place like Nebraska because this particular candidate is, interested in, working, in a place where he can raise a family, where there's a lower cost of living and so forth. and and where he can feel important being a tax attorney and actually, feel like he's offering, clients direct advice rather than working as part of a huge organization. So that's very important. So, the thing is there's always going to be firms in most markets that are going to be interested in someone with your background. And, even if this attorney wanted to, he could get a position probably in New York at a small law firm, if he looked at the market very, very closely, meaning, out of the thousands of law firms in New York, there's probably at least a few that would be interested in him. And there's literally opportunities everywhere. Law firms do not always put out openings looking for people, but they will hire people if the right person appears, whether or not that person's, a new graduate or if they're, like a practicing attorney. Because if a law firm has work, they can make out a lot of money. They can make a lot of money by billing you out and billing the work out you're doing. And it's like that with all employers. If they can make money from you, they're going to hire you. And most law firms have gaps. I mean, they have places like in the firm. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be in your practice area, but you have to find them. They have work that they're not accepting or doing simply because they don't have the attorneys to do the work. I mean, I have in this company, there's lots of work that we have that is not getting done because we don't have the people to do it. And most, law firms are like that. I mean, they have lots of work that's not getting done, and because it's not getting done, they're losing money. And our job, like what we do, is we look for places that people can apply to, and where they can make money. And that can help. So there's a lot of people raising their hand with questions, and I'm gonna just stop real quickly, and let me see if any of these are things I can help with. And I will take these questions at the end. I don't think these don't look like they're related to what I'm talking about, but I will take questions at the end. So as our job is to find those types of places. And so, you need to really, get out there and market yourself to as many places as you possibly can, and you're going to get much better results when you look at a lot more opportunities. If you're looking for a position, one option, you can use a recruiter. You can research positions on your own, but you should also use, lots of different job boards. Law Crossing is an example of a service that consolidates all the jobs that are out there in one place and can help you, find everything that's in the market. Sites like Indeed and so forth typically only put jobs on there that people are paying to advertise. Law Crossing gets them, from everywhere. So you need to look at as many opportunities in the market as you possibly can find. And, that's one of the most important things. Whether or not you use Law Crossing, that's up to you, but you need to use things like Law Crossing and other job search tools to find it. You need to do a lot of research, and you need to network to firms and companies that don't have openings. And when you don't get jobs, you don't want that to affect you. And, I'm sorry to harp on this but I do think it's extremely important. You need to work as hard as you possibly can to get yourself out there and find opportunities. And, a lot of people expect, opportunities to come to them. They expect, they want employers to, they want it to be easy. And it's not. I mean, you have to get out there and you have to do everything you can. And if you think about, every day you open your mailbox and there's tons of letters from people trying to sell you something. Every day, you turn on the television or you look at a website and there's people trying to sell you stuff. And so you need to be the same thing with yourself. I mean, you need to realize that you're a product. And if you're not getting jobs, you're undermarketing yourself. The solution, by the way, to most businesses, if they have a good product and the product's okay, and I'll talk to you a little bit about what your product is. But if they have a good product, I mean, they can always increase sales by advertising more. And so you can always increase, the people that are interested in you by advertising more. I also recommend, you do whatever you possibly can to be more geographically flexible. If you're not getting offers, you may just be applying in the wrong market. So an example would be like right now, at this particular part in time, like I said earlier, accounting, people from accounting firms that are doing tax law are not marketable in New York City. So someone that's geographically flexible can get jobs. Someone that's doing, litigation in New York City is also not marketable. So, to most firms. So they need to be geographically flexible. So, being geographically flexible is a huge advantage. It's something you need to do, and it's very important that you are geographically flexible because you need to stay employed and you need to save your career. I mean, there's nothing more important really for an attorney than staying employed, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the more markets you look at, the more success you're going to have. The more places you apply to, the more success you're going to have. You shouldn't just be applying to openings. You should be applying to places that don't necessarily have openings, and that's important. And that's really, if you're not getting the job offers you want, the first thing you should look at is whether or not you're under marketing yourself. And that's something I really recommend that everybody, think about very, very closely, because under marketing yourself is the number one reason that I see people, not getting jobs. And, just this morning I was thinking, there's a woman I'm working with, in Northern California that wants to move to Los Angeles. And I got her an interview with a firm that recently just, I found that just formed. It's a brand new firm, and they don't have any job openings, but I was able, I'm constantly marketing and reaching out to places, and I was able to get her an interview. And, and it's like that, every day. I mean, I just got someone placed a trust in the state's attorney, today, and there was someone that was geographically flexible and ready, to move to different parts of the country. So, the idea is that, when you're geographically flexible, things happen, and you need to be. And when you look at places that don't necessarily have openings, you're likely to get more, market yourself. And I really hope you listen to what I'm saying, because a lot of people are stuck, and especially now, like certain people, like, and a lot of young people want to work in major markets. They want to work in Chicago or New York or Los Angeles or Atlanta or Houston. And it's difficult to get into major markets, when the economy is not doing well. It's just because there's so many people competing for a limited number of jobs. You need to look at other markets, and you need to look at different size firms. And, and that's really, if you're not getting the job offers you want, that's what you need to do. And you need to really take what I'm saying, because that solution and what I'm talking about right now always works. It works for everybody, and it always has worked, and it always will work. I mean, I've been doing this for over 2 decades, and that's how it's this realization that, you have to look at lots of markets, and you have to look at small firms and large firms and different types of employers, has really, in terms of the work that I do, generated hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, and helped, tens and tens of thousands of people. So you need to do this, and I hope you listen to what I'm saying with this particular thing. And the next thing the reason people don't get the job offers they want is a lot of times they're trying to get the wrong type of legal job, and that's, a huge problem. And they're inflexible about the type of job they're looking for. And you need to realize that your background is kind of what it is. I mean, you've done things up until now, and the things that you've done are going to have an impact on, whether or not you're going to be employable in certain types of employers. Not every employer. I mean, as a law student, the only thing that most law firms have to compare you against is other law students. So, the better law school you went to, the better, the more marketable you're going to be, or the better your grades were, whatever law school you went to. I mean, that's going to, control a lot of what happens to you. It's difficult to get in the best law firms if you didn't go to a top law school. But if you did very well in a lesser law school, you can get into top law firms. It's very easy. It's easier to get into top law firms if you have, certain things in your background that are very impressive. I mean, I've seen people that were Olympic athletes that didn't go to great law school, get all sorts of offers, or football players, and, different things. So, or have very good social skills. It doesn't mean that a large law firm is closed off to you forever, because there's plenty of people that I know that start out at smaller firms and wind up in, major firms after getting business. And it's very common for people, or they get focused in a certain practice area and they move up. So you can always regardless of where you went to law school, regardless of how you did in law school, you can always work in a large law firm if you do certain things right and do that for in your career. So it's, a career is a long thing. I mean, it's for attorneys, it's 40, 50 years, so you can even longer in many cases. I mean, I've seen people do this into their 90s, but I mean, productively, I mean, you can be an attorney well into your, 80s. I mean, definitely. Okay, so, but one of the things that a lot of people do is they will try to switch practice areas. If they're a corporate attorney and the work gets slow in corporate, or they decide they don't like it, they may want to work as a litigator. And that can be very challenging. I've seen people that are first in their class from really good law schools and try to switch practice areas, and it's just, the law firm's not interested in it. I mean, the law firm wants people that are doing one thing. So, it's not to say you can't switch practice areas, but it's going to be very, very difficult if you want to do something like that. You just can't expect it. I mean, it's going to be difficult. It's also, difficult if you want to switch practice settings. So, sometimes, if you're working for a public interest organization or the government, it becomes very difficult to get hired by law firms. Law firms, for example, I mean, they really do want to hire people from other law firms because they want to see a commitment to that. That means that if you're in public interest, for example, you can without too much difficulty, get another position in a public interest organization that does the same thing. People that are in government jobs can get positions that do the same thing in the government, but it becomes difficult, to get hired by a lot of law firms if you have a commitment to one practice setting or one practice area. I mean, if you're trying to switch practice settings or practice areas, it can be difficult. Now, even attorneys that are, trying to go in-house, a lot of times, will spin their wheels for a long time trying to get jobs in-house. You can get a job in-house if you're an attorney in a law firm, but it can be very difficult and it can take a long time. I've seen attorneys in New York spend years or in a major city. There's other limitations that people come up against, and I saw a question and I'll answer it about, being a senior attorney, with no business. It can be difficult and challenging to get hired by another major law firm, but it's also controlled by, the market. So, in some cases, your practice area might suddenly be in demand, but, law firms are typically interested in attorneys with business. So if you're a major attorney, if you're an attorney with no business, you may need to go to a smaller law firm, or you may need to go in-house or find another role. It's just, you may be applying to the wrong jobs. If you're trying to work in a very competitive market where you're not from, it's going to be very difficult to get a position, there. I mean, I work with people all the time that are from, Kansas and, Kentucky and things like that. And, they decide they want to move to, Silicon Valley or, New York or Chicago. And, those firms in those areas, unless you have a connection, I mean, there's plenty of people, in Chicago that are fighting for the same jobs. And, it's a big risk for them bringing in someone, from out of town that may have gone, to a school like, in Kentucky or, in an area like that. So, it's difficult. There's just not a lot of incentive that a law firm in New York City will have to hire people from Kentucky. So you may, at the same, why it's important to look at a lot of markets, it can be very difficult to break into a major market. And, just mailing out resumes, from Kentucky to major markets is, unless you have some sort of practice area skill, that's very rare, it's going to be tough, and it's just what it is. So if you, are applying to the wrong sorts of jobs, you're going to have to apply to a lot more places, than if you're not. I mean, that doesn't mean you can't get a job in the wrong sort of, the type of job, but it's going to be difficult. And, I see people, that have certain requirements all the time, that they draw these lines in the sand about things that they want and they expect. So, some people will only take jobs that pay a certain amount of money. I've seen, people demand, very high salaries. I was talking to a woman, not too long ago that was making almost $500,000 a year as a senior associate at a law firm in Los Angeles. And not only that, but she was, allowed to work at home a certain number of days a week, and not working crazy hours, and she was getting paid too much. I mean, and there's a lot of people that are like that, and she expected another law firm to pay for that with no business, and that's just not realistic. I mean, it's not realistic probably to make, you know, uh, it's not realistic. So, you have to, understand like what the market you're in, will pay, and you have to, go someplace. And if you commit to wherever you're working, and if it's a good place and they advance people, then you'll make a lot more money. But, other requirements that people have are reduced hours, working remotely and things. And that can, obviously, all those things are possible. I mean, there's, countless attorneys that work remotely, or that work reduced hours. But, anytime you inject something into your job search that limits the number of offers you get, or is a hard and fast requirement, it's going to, make it harder for you to get a job. Your best option is to, not introduce this stuff into your search, and then maybe try to negotiate it later. I saw a guy get a really good job actually this morning, and he was he's in a southern state, and he had this these demands that that he be able to go to I don't know, sports games or something, 1 or 2 days a week with his kids, and leave work early, and and not be available. And he was trying to work in a major firm, and and they said yes, and hired him even in the middle of this, it's a weird market. And but at the same time, it did put the brakes on the process for a while, and then they needed to meet with him again, and and it could have resulted in him not getting the job. If he had brought it up, before, the offer and so forth, or after the offer, he probably would have had a little bit more negotiation leverage, and it wouldn't have risked his job. So you need to be careful with that sort of thing. So if you're applying to the wrong sorts of jobs, you need to fix this. It's going to hold you back. And, let me see that. Okay, so the next thing is your resume and cover letter may need a lot of work. And I see this all the time with people looking for jobs, and it's distressing, and I, have done, a lot of, work on, talking about resumes and cover letters, and I'm going to talk about it again real briefly. But one thing I can say, and I was talking to all of, doing a write-up this morning for everyone that works here. And one of the things that I've noticed, and this is very important, and I hope you guys consider this, is that, the best resumes that get offers, that get interviews and so forth, are almost always focused on one thing. The person's not all over the place. They look like they do one sort of work. So, and then I had a meeting yesterday with some of our recruiters, and we had a candidate that had been doing real estate and banking work. And banking work actually right now, like anything to do with banking and workouts for loans and stuff, is very marketable. But prior to that, they've been doing like a mix of banking work and litigation and all this stuff. And they've had all these jobs like over, 10 plus years. And and so the discussion was, you need to make this person's resume look more focused on banking and de-emphasize all this other stuff. There's nothing dishonest about, not drawing lots and lots of attention to things that aren't related to what's marketable. So your resume has to look, like something in your cover letter that's focused. It needs to, it's going to determine what happens to you, who interviews you, and who makes you an offer. I see some of the strangest resumes, all the time, and they have all these things that are completely unrelated. I mean, there's a format of resumes that's like a military resume that people write, and the military teaches you to write resumes in a certain way, and those are typically just crazy. I mean, they talk about, all this stuff like in awards, and and like law firms do not want to see that. They want to see, someone that looks good for the background of the job that they have, and they don't want to see all sorts of other things that are completely unrelated, because they'll look at it and they'll get confused. And one of the things is when you're writing something for a court, you need to have an argument, and that argument needs to be clear and direct. And you want the judge or whatever to take your side by being fair and in realizing where you stand on an issue and taking your side. And so if you put in all this other stuff that confuses the judge and has nothing to do with anything, you're probably not going to win. And the best litigators and the best people are able to make very concise points and able to sell themselves very well. And you need the ability to sell yourself. You need the ability to be very clear and direct and say you do something and and really do a good job. So I told you this military stuff. And so the other day I reviewed a resume of a law student that wants to work in a law firm. And I review these resumes, all the time. And and because people come out of the military and there's legal jobs in the military and then they want to work. And so this attorney had a resume that had all of these, honors and activities, and it was, 5 pages, and it had all sorts of, just battalion leadership, and talked about, the types of tanks that he drove, and what a great military resume. But the problem is like someone that's, been looking at books all their life, and looking at this and just needs someone to, order someone to go write a memo or is not going to want someone that, has this sort of resume. It's just, they're going to want, to know what this person can do to help the employer. And it's got to speak to that. So anything that you've done that's not related to practicing law really needs to be minimized. I mean, if this guy had just put his dates of military service and his final rank or whatever, and the branch he was in, and his law school, and and college, and left it at that, he'd be much better off than all this other stuff that he's righteously very proud of. But I'm certainly proud of all the trophies and stuff I got growing up, and awards that I got when I was in high school for various things. But I'm certainly not going to put all those on my resume. So it's just, people don't want to see it. It just detracts from what you have, and you need to look like someone that wants to work something. So work in a law firm. So you need to think about how your audience is looking at things, and it's about your audience. It's not about you. So having one more journal or one more award or one more honor, or one more, class listed is not going to make a difference in what the employer thinks. The employer is going to bring you in, for because you look focused and because they believe that you can do a job. And that's really it. I mean, they're not going to, they're being the editor in chief of a law review or something is a big deal, but they're not really going to be that interested in a lot of different things. If you were the member of the, whatever club, it's just, you have to look focused. So your resume needs to look the part. And so this particular guy was not getting jobs, not getting interviews, because he had a 5-page resume that had nothing to do with practicing law. And it's a problem, and lots of people do it, and I don't like it. You need, the other thing you need to worry about is your resume needs to make you look stable. It needs to make you look committed to legal work. So if you're not getting interviews, your resume is probably, making you look unstable. Your resume needs to, really look like, you know what you want, and there needs to be some sort of, look of like upward mobility and that sort of thing. If people are going, to take a chance on you because they're receiving lots of resumes for most jobs, and you need to look the part. And I've done presentations on resumes. I've done presentations on cover letters. I've talked a lot before and written a lot about this, but this is a big thing too. So if you have the right resume and if you have the right, very direct cover letter, and then you're applying to enough places, anyone should be able to get a job. I mean, I've gotten, people from, small law schools that, in Michigan, like, coming out of school, like, helping them. I mean, 10 plus job offers in a major market like Los Angeles by reaching enough employers, by making the resume look focused and having a direct cover letter and, doing things, in a way that needs to be done. But if you're doing too much and trying to look like too much, it's going to hurt you. Okay, so the next thing is interview skills. And then I'm going to talk, this is going to be kind of fun because I'm going to talk about, reasons to take offers and reasons not to take offers. But I just want to, show you first why you're not getting the offers you want, and the things you need to do. So, interview skills are important. There's people that, really do very well in every interview they go into. Some people are just, will tell me, I mean, I get every job I go into, and they're right. I mean, they do. They're just very direct. They ask the right questions. They smile. They're good socially. They talk about what, they can do for the employer. They ask a lot of questions. They come across as they want to work, and they'll do a good job. And, you need to read the things I've written about interviewing, but you also need to understand, that the best people in interviews, make the interviews about the employer, not themselves. It's the same thing with the resumes, like I spoke about. Like the resumes that weren't, getting a lot of traction are ones where the person is just talking all about themselves and not really thinking about being direct. And, you need to appear willing and able to work. I mean, I've seen, people come in to work with me and, and they just don't appear like they're enthusiastic about working. And, and they don't, you just don't know. I mean, but the employer wants to feel supported. And, if you're not getting offers, you're likely doing something wrong. And, you should read about it, and you should, study up on interviewing. You should talk to other people about what you've done in interviewing. Even if you're out of law school, law schools will, have career services offices that are very good. They will talk to you about what you may be doing wrong interviewing. And you should get a sense of what you're doing wrong. I mean, the major thing that people do wrong in interviews is they don't kind of psych themselves up for the job when they go in, and that comes across. Or they're nervous, or they're not, they're holding something back, or they were fired from a job and they think that the interviewer is not going to like them for that. And you need to pick yourself up and get enthusiastic when you go in for interviews. And you need to make the person think that the job is important to you and that you want to commit, and this represents something to you. Because employers do not want to hire people that are likely to leave. I mean, that particular guy that I told you about, the appellate clerk, why would I hire someone, even if they had great qualifications, that I knew didn't want the job? You just need to really be enthusiastic, and you need to read about it, and you need to think about it, and you need to play, out these interviews in your mind and see what you did right and what you did wrong, and think about the interviews you did get, where you did get jobs. And in most cases, you probably, were able to connect with the employer somehow, whether it was common shared interest or an interest in working for them, or you communicated that you liked the employer, that working there meant something to you. You have to think about what you did wrong. But people that don't get jobs, a lot of times because they're interviews, they just need improvement. I can say, there's two types of kind of interviewers. There's the older ones, and then there's the younger ones. And, older ones may, come across as, sometimes as knowing too much or not being able to be managed. That's, and making the employer feel like they won't be in control, or they may have come across having a chip on their shoulder. I'm just talking about people that are, a few years out of law school. I'm not necessarily saying people with 10 or 20, but I mean, a few years out of law school. Younger interviewers a lot of times come across as not as enthusiastic, not having a lot of energy, not having a lot of enthusiasm. Those are some of the mistakes that people make. Or they talk too much about themselves, and they let that come across. So those are just some ideas, but if your interview skills need improvement, you need to fix that. And when you do get interviews, because you should realize that all the work that goes into getting a single interview is a big thing. And if you blow it, that's your problem. But the problem is that when an employer invites you in for an interview, the big thing to remember is that person has a need, and they really do want to like you, and they want to be sold, and they want to hire you. It's really, the ball's in your court, and especially if you're applying if you get an interview with a firm that doesn't have an opening, then that firm really wants to try to give you a chance. So you need to sell yourself when you go in. You need to make it about the employer. You need to really kind of focus. And please, review other things I've done about interviewing, but that's very, very important. Okay, so the next question is, should I take a job offer I'm not happy with? And that means, taking a job with a firm or a company or an employer that you're not going to want to stay at a long time. It's basically like, entering a relationship with someone, or an employer that, that is not going to last. I mean, people jump around from employer to employer, unhappy. They work in places that they don't think, they're going to stay in the long term. And, there's reasons, to take a job that you're not happy with. I mean, one of them could be, you need the money, you have a family to support. And those are all good reasons. And, but you're only going to be in the situation, by the way, if you haven't done a lot of the things I'm talking to you about, which is like, making sure you don't undermarket yourself, making sure your resume is good, and making sure, you're interviewing well. But if you're getting a job offer you're unhappy with, and you really think it's the only thing that you can get in the geographic location you're living in and tied to, or whatever, then there's obvious reasons to take it. The other thing that's important to remember is, anytime there's a gap on your resume, it can be harmful. Now, there are good reasons to have gaps. I mean, one of the reasons it's perfectly acceptable is, if you're having a child, or and most employers really are not bothered by that at all. And it doesn't hurt you at all, really. But pretty much, from the second you start law school, you're, expected to have a summer job. You're expected to have, hopefully work in a firm in your second summer, if you want to work in a law firm, and you're expected to have a job when you get out, and pretty much when you retire. I mean, lawyers are supposed to be employed constantly, and I don't know where that rule comes from, but that's how lawyers think. And I've, even between when I finished a clerkship, I think in I don't know, like July, and I had a job starting in October, and my clerkship ended, and all these people were like, why, you can't have a gap in your resume, blah blah blah. And this is a long time ago, and these were other attorneys that said that to me, like there was something criminal about taking a few months off. And that's really, I hate to say it, but that's how attorneys think, and it's just the way that the profession is. So you need to do whatever you can to try to stay employed, and to have to not have gaps on your resume, if you can avoid that. And that's one reason to take a job you're unhappy with, if you think that you're not going to get something better. And I hate to be the bearer of all this news, because I know for a lot of people that aren't employed, it's very difficult. And it's not, I'm not trying to rub salt on anybody's wounds or anything. If you have this gap, I mean, it can always be fixed later. But the thought is, I think that anybody that has a marketable skill, like being an attorney, should be able to find a position. And if you have an employment gap, it shows you're not really effectively able to represent yourself and find something when you need to. If you were representing a client, a good attorney, like, clients come to them with all sorts of problems. I need to fix this. I need to fix this. I need to do this. And the good attorney is expected to solve it. And so, you having a job is a problem, and it's something that you need to solve. And if you're not doing it, then it's going to make you, look unmarketable. If you can't solve your own problem, how can you solve others' problems effectively? And all the tools that I'm talking to you about, which are things like doing research and finding places, going out and knocking on doors of places that don't necessarily have openings. These are the kind of tools and things that a good attorney would do with their client. If you needed to solve a client's problems, you wouldn't just, look at what the law says. You would look at other people you can talk to that can help you around, and the law that may not, be holding them. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you can do, to solve problems. If you look at, like, people that, get out of problems and so forth, a lot of it is just networking and, and things that attorneys do. I mean, Imagine how good the attorneys are, behind the scenes of some people that get off on, doing things that are bad, or how companies avoid getting sued and so forth. They have good attorneys that are kind of working behind the scenes and solving problems. So you need to solve problems. So unemployment is a problem. The other thing is, if you have a gap on your resume, a lot of employers will think, that there's something wrong with you, and they'll wonder why others are not hiring you, not taking a chance. I mean, for the most part, I mean, attorneys do not make, huge amounts of money. I mean, they may, make a good living, but most of them do not make a huge amount of money. So if you're not working, the perception is that every attorney needs to work, and that's how people think. So, that people believe if you're not getting hired, there's something about you or something happened, and others aren't going to take a chance. It could be that you don't want to work. It could be that you were fired, you did something wrong. There's bad news about you in the legal community. I had a guy once, it was very strange. He had been, and this is in a Midwestern state, he'd been unemployed for, I don't know, like 6 months, and had a great background in his practice area. And from all intents and purposes, I didn't see anything wrong with him. And he was hired by a firm, and they were very excited to get him. But then about a week into hiring him, they suddenly, fired him. And I said, "What happened?" And they said, "Nothing." And I said, "Well, why did you let him go?" And I guess there was some, and they said, "Well, if he didn't tell you, we can't tell you either." And I said, "Well, what?" And so something had happened with him in the past, at an employer or something, I don't know, but there was something wrong. And the news got back to the firm, and when he was hired, and they let him go. And it was very strange. And so the problem is when you have a gap on your resume, a lot of times firms will assume that there was something like that. And I don't know to this day what the guy did. He said he didn't know, but I don't know. I mean, he was equally confused by it, and maybe someone didn't like him, or I don't know. I just don't know. But he had a gap, and it hurt him. And so a lot of times people with gaps, law firms don't like that. So, the unwritten rule that you need to remember is why it's important to take offers a lot of times is because, you're just expected to start working. And law firms want you, they want people that need to work. I mean, it's very rare, but a lot of times when attorneys make a lot of money and they can retire, they do, but law firms want you to need to work and be able to work, and employers, because this gives them control over you. They like it when you buy houses. They like it when you buy cars. They like it when you have a family. They like it when you have a mortgage, because they know you're going to need to support all that stuff and need their money to do it. So, the unwritten rule is, once you start working, you're really never expected to stop working. So I have just a quick story that's kind of funny, but, there's a saying in real estate a lot of times that the first offer you get is going to be the best offer you get when selling a house. I'm not sure if it's always true, but in my experience it is. And, so the idea is that once, something comes out to the market, it's fresh, everyone's enthusiastic, and, then, they're going to, the best price is going to happen. So I once purchased a house. I mean, I think it might've been a little bit more than 300, like 380,000 or something. But I purchased a house for $380,000 less than it received an offer for when it first went on the market. And then it sat on the market, and it was a good job. I mean, it was a good housing market. It was kind of during the housing boom, but it sat on the market for almost a year, in a good market after receiving this offer. And the longer the house is on the market, the more people found things wrong with it when they looked at it. And even the real estate agent would be kind of like telling me, all the problems with it. But I mean, the house was right next to a bus stop or across the street. And, and the buses were loud, and there was a lot of smoke, that would kind of come over the road into the backyard. It was dark smoke. It was, there was a large hotel right across the street as well. And during the weekends, there would be no parking on the street. The staff would come out on like three after their shifts every day, and then they'd all stand on the bus stop and smoke and talk. And then the worst thing about it though is it's actually kind of funny, but there was a person that had originally owned the house before me, like a couple people before me, was this girl that was 25 and like a socialite and just all apparently in drugs and stuff, and she'd painted, hired some artist and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in the 1980s painting all these things on the ceiling. And you couldn't really get rid of them because the artist was like appreciating their value, but it was that these paintings were just absolutely, astonishing how bad they were. Anyway, so it was stuff that you just didn't want people looking at the ceiling, especially kids. But I bought the house, and it was just all these things. So you can get something a lot less a lot of times, when it's been on the market for a long time. And you typically, people will ask, the longer you've been on the market, what's wrong with you? And so it is important to try to get offers as quickly as possible. It's important to take offers. It's important to market yourself a lot of places because you don't want to be on the market a long time. And the longer you're on the market, the longer your presumed value goes down, the more people will be nervous about pulling the trigger, and they're going to question why you've been on the market so long time. So those are reasons to take an offer, but and you just want to avoid a gap in your resume. So there's also reasons to not take job offers you're unhappy with, and and these are very important. And the one thing that I think is, with any employer is if you come in and you really commit to them and you do a good job and you show your value, any employer can be a good place to work. But not everybody is willing to do that. And there are, excuse me, there are places to work that are not good places. And so, and there's nothing you can really do to control that, and you shouldn't be there. But, if you take a job you don't want, you're always going to have one foot off the door. You're not going to work as hard as you might. You're going to feel angry. You're not doing what you want, or getting the experience you want, or getting paid you want. And you're going to, poison the people around you. If you have a bad attitude, you're going to set yourself up for bad references. You're just going to have kind of bad feelings about yourself, and you're just going to have an overall bad experience if you don't approach it in the right way. And one story that I have is, in our company, we get all these people coming to try to get placed every day. And I always, every year, and this year has been especially a lot of people, but, every year there's going to be people, they're people whose resumes I come across that are, fresh graduates, like they're just graduating from Harvard, Berkeley, Columbia, or so forth. And, for whatever reason, they're not getting jobs. And a lot of it's economy based, but a lot of times, they may not, interview well. They may not have done enough searches. They somehow they don't look as attractive as they, to firms that are getting, that are employing their peers. And, and there's just, but they want to work in a large law firm. So, in the 20 years I've been doing this, I see a lot of these people that aren't getting jobs sometimes. And, in one case, I hired a guy that, had been that ended up, he was brilliant, but he was just so I don't know, he was more interested in computer programming and that sort of thing, and very kind of solitary activities. And that's what he ended up, ultimately, doing. But I hired him to do legal work. I've hired other people, that I hired one person that had graduated from a top law school at the age of 17 or 19. He was the youngest graduate of, a top 10 law school in history. But anyway, the point is I come across people that for whatever reason aren't able to get positions. And I've hired them, because I want them. I don't like it. I feel that I want to help people and give them legal experience. And so, but all of these people, and were, resentful because I couldn't pay them as much as a large law firm because I'm not a law firm. I couldn't pay them as much as large law firms are paying. And, initially they were happy to get the positions, but then they became, resentful. So in one example, I hired someone, and this is a long time ago, but it was actually the guy that graduated at the age of 19, or from a top 10 law school, and he was upset that he wasn't getting paid as much as a major law firm would, and he was very smart and able to do very well. Very smart and just brilliant. I mean, just but anyway, so I hired him, and then he protested, and after being there for 6 months, and wanted to make as much as a major law firm would pay. So I ended up paying him as much as a major law firm was paying, which is dumb. But at the time, it seemed like a good decision, and I was trying to be nice and kind of help him, and he didn't have any family, but nearby. And but anyway, he was still unhappy then, because then he said, well, I shouldn't have to work as hard because I'm not working at a major law firm. I'm working in-house, and I shouldn't have to do this and this and this. And he was leaving at 5 every day and saying, that, and it's still unhappy. So the point is that, I hired people that didn't want to do the job, and they were unhappy, and they were resentful that they weren't getting paid as much. They would undermine the people around them, by complaining about the job and the pay, or like that it wasn't a big firm, and weren't committing to the work in a spirited way. And it was a mistake. And I've made that mistake on numerous occasions, by trying to help people. And and it's not, so when you take a job offer you're not happy with, then it can hurt you. And all of these people who should have had really good experiences with their first employer, had a bad experience. I felt bad, they felt bad. It just was not a smart thing. So, I've also made a lot of mistakes, hiring recruiters, for example, didn't really want the job, and, took jobs they didn't want. I mean, the people that I hired, the young people, and, they're coming out of law school from great schools and so forth. I made a mistake because, they didn't really want the job, and they couldn't commit to it. And, and they made a mistake because it wasn't what they wanted. But in one case, I made an offer to someone that had an incredible legal background, and had actually worked in another recruiting firm. I never hire people from other recruiting firms, but this particular guy, I decided to. And he was made an offer, and then for several weeks, he just kind of sat on the offer and didn't respond. And which is, most of the time when I make people offers, I mean, they respond, very quickly. I mean, if not when they get the offer, then, quickly. And he didn't respond. And so, I decided I would just call him and retract the offer, because I was kind of, looking bad with other people in the company. And the day I was going to do this, I had it as kind of a list of things to do that day. He called me and sent me an email, accepting the offer. I had no idea why he delayed for so long. When he started, he did not commit to the job. He complained and undermined the business and the people around him, and he was toxic. And, he really seemed, focused on his own good. He wasn't really helping the people that worked and the candidates he worked with. And about 6 months after he started, one day he just quit and took a position with the law school as director of career services. And this is, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, a lot of people that have worked in our company are directors of career services at top law schools all over the country. And there's nothing wrong with that decision. But, what he told me or other people on the way out was that he hadn't accepted the offer because he'd been waiting for an offer from a law school, and the law school didn't get funding. They promised funding in the future. And, and so he took an offer in a job that he didn't want. And then in the process, was a toxic presence, and was unhappy. It's not what he wanted to do. He wanted to work in a law school, and he got the job, but he shouldn't have done something and spent, weeks of my time and, for training and other people's time, and then undermine a company in the process. I knew someone, that another person I hired, that was attorney with a major New York law firm and had been for over a decade. And this person, was accepted, got a job as a recruiter director from a major law firm during a recession, in a very good law firm. And then they lost their job as a recruitment director. And then they wanted a position to work here. And, and I made them an offer. And the same thing, they didn't, accept the position. And then when they did accept it, they took more time before taking the job. And then when they did, they just kind of showed up and acted like they knew everything. And, and were another toxic presence and someone that didn't commit. And then months later, the job with the firm opened again and they rushed back to it. So they never committed to it. So, these are, mistakes on both sides. I made a mistake hiring people I should not have, and other people made a mistake taking a job they should not have. And I'm sure you can think of jobs that you've taken in the past that may not have worked out because you were unhappy there and because, the employer shouldn't have hired you. And, if you take a job you're not committed to and you don't really put yourself into it, there's a lot of danger. I mean, you're going to hurt yourself and the employer in the process. And those people that, took jobs with me and didn't really want the jobs, all of them, I have, unfortunately, a resentment that I shouldn't have. I mean, everyone's out for themselves, but, a lot of times, but I have resentment because, I made a mistake and, my resentment is internal. And, I also feel bad that the people, that I hired people that didn't really want the job, and acted like they did. So those are reasons, good reasons not, to take jobs. And, if you're unhappy with them and if you're not going to like them. And, there's jobs that are not difficult to find. I mean, an example would be, you can go to a contract, you can take a job as a contract attorney. You can work for a low-paid public interest organization. You can work, doing a low-paid job in personal injury or a low-paid insurance defense firm. You can work in a government position. You can do consumer-facing work, where, you may be doing auto accidents or something. I mean, and you can work in undesirable geographic locations, like very undesirable, like, in the middle of the desert in California. I mean, not like, I'm not talking about Palm Springs, I'm talking about like, very small towns, where there are not a lot of people. I mean, there's always places you can get a job, but the problem is, that you may not want to be happy there. And I see positions advertised all the time where they want people to work for $15 an hour and things. I mean, it's attorneys, and there's just tons of jobs you can take if you're willing to do them. But I think you're probably going to be better off taking, looking for a job and following my advice and finding the job you want than trying to work at a job that doesn't pay a lot of money or in the middle of the desert, unless that's your thing. I personally think it might be kind of interesting, but I don't know. But the idea, though, is that if you take a position you're unhappy with, you're going to leave, and you're going to upset the employer in a lot of cases and get a bad reference. And, and in most cases, it's just not a good idea. I once, heard a well-known billionaire say, and it was just in a newspaper article, I think in the LA Times, and he was kind of writing all this list of things that he used to govern his work, and he said you should never rehire anyone. And every time I've rehired someone, for example, it's been a bad mistake, and it's not a good idea. So, one occasion I had a human resource director and he quit. He was unhappy with the position, and then he contacted me about coming back. A short time after quitting, like 4 or 5 days or something. And I was like, sure. So I met with him, and he stayed for 6 months. And, and when he came back, the same things he was unhappy about when he was there, he was unhappy with. And he, shared his unhappiness with everyone and created a negative environment. And, he stopped doing his job, he came in late, wasn't dedicated, and, went around and shared his displeasure, with, with over 10 people, he worked at 10 different companies in like 5 years before in different settings, like nonprofit, government, and so forth. He found a job he was more comfortable and happier with. Another occasion, a recruiter of mine quit because she was unhappy. She called me, a couple weeks later, begged to come back, and I brought her back. 6 months later, she left and took one of my best employees to a competing firm with her. And when she was there, before doing that, she was just very toxic and critical and unhappy. And then she continued recruiting people from my company that stole data, and I ended up suing the company, and a lawsuit happened, and the firm got in trouble, and employees got in trouble, and two of the people are no longer even in the business. I mean, and one did go into law school career services, but it just resulted in all these problems. And so, taking jobs you're unhappy with, that you don't want, it's just bad. I mean, if you're not going to commit to wherever you're going, and you're going to create problems, and you're going to be like this toxic presence and unhappy, then you shouldn't do it unless you can think about the job in a more positive way. So my conclusion really is that if you take a job you don't want, it's rarely going to end well. You're going to be unhappy. You're going to make others miserable. You're going to get bad references. You're going to create problems. And it's not smart. And it's like this with relationships. I mean, you shouldn't be, with someone you don't want to, where it's not going to end well, because it's just not fair to you and the other person. You shouldn't marry someone you don't love, or who isn't going to love you. I mean, it's never going to end well. You shouldn't, stay in relationships with people like friends and so forth that are where you know that it's not going to go well. And it's the same thing with employers. I mean, you can't expose yourself to situations. Life's too short. I mean, you don't want to expose yourself to situations where you're going to be unhappy. It's just, you shouldn't, if when you're taking a job that it's not where you want to go, or it's not leading, to where you want to go, you shouldn't do it. If you want to work in a law firm, you may not want to go in-house. If you want to be a plaintiff side litigator, you probably shouldn't take a defense job. And if you want a permanent job in the future, taking a contract job is going to make it much harder to transition, into a permanent job. So I'm going to answer questions in a second, but I just want to, say that, the decisions you make with your career and the jobs you take should show upward mobility. You should take something if it's going to lead to something. So an example would be, like, if you can't get a job with a major law firm and you want to work in a law firm, that's fine. I mean, but what you need to do is you need to go to wherever you get a job, and you need to throw yourself into it 100%, and you need to commit, and you need to learn everything you can, and you need to sell yourself on, what your goal is, and then you need to become bigger than the job. I mean, people don't get into positions. When you outgrow something, that's when it's time to move. Or when you're better at something, that's when it's time to move. You have to have like a background that is bigger than, you have to grow out of something, and become bigger than it, and learn. Because, if you're doing personal injury law, for example, I mean, there's people that make hundreds of millions of dollars a year doing it. I mean, wow. I'm not saying that, that finances are the goal, but they help people. And the same thing with, class action attorneys and all sorts of things. And so, if that's the only job you can get, you should learn everything you can about it, and then set a goal for yourself that's big. And if you outgrow that, then great. If you get a job, there's people that run giant insurance defense firms, and, or patent firms. And so you need to outgrow, where you go. And if the best like the life offers you is a certain type of job, then get bigger than it, and commit to it and do well. And that's the secret of really becoming a good attorney, is that you need to, do the best you can where you're at. And, you need to give everything you got, because the cream always rises to the top. I see countless examples of people that get really good jobs and started literally at the bottom. And now they're in these great things, and they're inspired, and they've committed, and they attract good things, and they're always focused. I mean, their resume's focused, their background's focused, their, their experience is focused, and I hope you listen to what I'm saying, because I'm telling you this from decades of experience, watching attorneys, seeing who's successful, seeing who's not, and honestly, it doesn't matter where you are right now. It doesn't matter what your experience was or is. It matters what you do with what you have, and that's going to make a huge difference in your career and in your life. And so one of the things that I see is, and I hate to say this, but a lot of people, have careers and lives, where they dabble. And dabbling means, you don't commit, to a job. You don't commit to your practice area. You don't commit to being an attorney. You don't commit to a practice setting. You don't commit to a market. You don't commit even to relationships and people in your life. You don't commit to an identity that I'm an attorney. You don't commit to anything, and that's dabbling. And frankly, a lot of people spend their whole life and their whole career dabbling and never committing to something. And I'm telling you that that is one of the biggest things that's going to hold you back. You dabble when you don't apply to enough employers. You dabble when you don't focus your resume on something and you think you need to be all different things. You dabble when you don't commit to a practice area. You dabble when you don't commit to an employer. It's dabbling and dabbling and dabbling. And the most successful people and the happiest people, by the way, are people that don't dabble. Dabbling is really one of the most significant errors that people make. And it's so pronounced in attorneys looking for jobs. It's just, you're not there to do a job. You're there to have a career. And when you don't get offers you want, you're likely dabbling. And this is the #1 cause of failures for attorneys. None of this matters, wherever you are now doesn't matter. You need to commit to something, you need to focus. And if you do that, you're going to get the jobs you want. And, that's kind of where it's at. And I hope, you've listened to what I've said today. I know it's a lot of information, but whoever you are and wherever you are, you need to do whatever you can, to get on a road where you're working forward and not quit and and commit to the jobs you get, or don't take ones that you're not going to want to do. If you want to work in a law school, taking a job with a recruiting firm is not a good avenue to get there. It's not smart. So do the things you want. I'm glad there's got some questions here. Okay, so the first one is, I have been looking to secure an in-house position. I found that there is an age barrier and no opportunity given my 20+ years of experience. What are your thoughts? I have tried general counsel positions, but never supervised a team of people. Okay, well, the first thing is I don't think, having 20+ years of experience is a barrier to get an in-house position. I don't think I think actually that's something that can help you. I think it depends on the type of employer that you're applying to. I don't know what market you're looking at, but I had an example where a friend of mine was in-house and he lost an in-house position and wanted to work in another in-house company. And what I did with him was I helped him basically do letters to several hundred companies around Los Angeles, and he got a lot of offers. Some of them were small companies. One of them was like an Italian restaurant chain that had, I don't know, 6 or 7 restaurants around LA. So and he was able to get positions. So I don't know that. Also, you asked about never having supervised people. I don't think that is necessarily something that you need to do, to be a general counsel or have that experience. I think that law firms will be fine with that, and I don't think. Companies, I don't think will have a problem with that. I think just the fact that you have the experience is fine. And you may want to work in a smaller company, or, I guess it just depends, but depending on the kind of company you want to work with. Okay, so the next question is PR part of pre-sale activity for senior positions? Yeah, I'm not really sure how to answer that question. But being able to promote yourself effectively, I think is an important activity. Yes. Okay. Next one is, I've heard the advice to apply to firms that don't have openings a lot. Can you go into a bit more detail on the process of how to apply to firms not advertising openings effectively? Well, the big thing is you want to do a search for all the firms in your geographic location and where you want to work. So you can find those firms fairly easily by using Google and searching for firms in your practice area that do that. And a lot of times they will list those firms, which is a great resource. Another way to do that, BCG has a list of recommended firms. If you go to BCG search, there's recommended firms in different locations and practice areas. And so that's a good resource. And then those lead directly to the firm where you can find people. You can also, use lists. There's lots of, there's Martindale, and there's all sorts of different places where you can find firms. And so that's one way of finding them. But when I'm researching firms, I use a lot of different resources. I use our database, which contains, firms in almost every firm, but we're constantly, finding firms. We use, Google will find new firms as they become open that you may not know about right away or that don't list themselves publicly. Martindale's good, FindLaw's good. I mean, there's just a lot of good resources. And there's all sorts of attorney directories out there. So that's really, in my opinion, the best way. But when you do apply to those firms, you should indicate, if you should make sure that they do your practice area. And a lot of times the smart thing to do is to write who's ever head of your practice area. If it's a smaller firm or, and if it's a larger firm, they'll typically have an HR department. Okay, I am concerned that smaller markets will likely put a cap on the salary offerings I'm able to achieve. Unfortunately, salary is important to my bottom line because of student loan debt. Can you speak to the tension between smaller market job searches and the salary expectations of applicants in those markets? Okay, well, that's a good question. It depends on, the first thing is most student loan payments are can be income-based, so they will, I believe. I mean, I used to actually know, be in the business of student loans. I don't really know a lot about it anymore, but I believe that's the case, or you can extend the payments. But one, and someone raised their hand, and I will raise all these questions too in a second. But they will put a cap on salary offerings, but at the same time, many smaller law firms will also do something where they will give you a percentage of originations, meaning if you're able to go out there and bring in clients, they'll pay you and they'll pay you for that. And people can make a lot of money doing that. I mean, you can make, quite a bit of money. So it depends, if you're a junior attorney starting or whatever, but, in most cases, most law firms, you have the opportunity to significantly increase your compensation if you are able to bring in business. That's one reason I like law firms so much, by the way, is because when you work in a law firm, it is a way to, have a lot of control over your income. When you get more senior in law firms, I mean, you can make, you could start out literally in a law firm making, and I've seen this, making, $50,000, $60,000 a year, and you can build a book of business and continually build it and get into a situation, where you're making millions of dollars a year. And that's actually a fairly common thing. I mean, it does happen a lot. And, so building up a book of business in a smaller market and then moving to, your clients to larger markets is one thing. But if you can't, find the kind of income you want in a smaller market, then you probably need to penetrate and try to, look at more positions in larger markets if you can. But you may need to be flexible on your, income or the number of places, the number of markets you're applying to get the right position that pays a lot. And I don't know anything about your background, but at the same time, I would recommend doing that. Okay, so let's see here. What does it mean to knock on doors? How do you get your foot in the door? What do you tell them you want to talk to them about? Do you show up uninvited? Okay, well, that's a great question. So there's a couple different ways to answer that question. But one thing I would say is when you knock on doors, what that means is typically it means you're sending in your resume and you're applying places and telling them that you're interested in them. And that's very, very important, and something if you're able to do that, you're going to get, people will call you and talk to you. I can tell you that for our company, we used to have a law firm that was part of it, and it was a small law firm of like 3 or 4 attorneys, and we would use it for internal type things that were going on, that we needed, the company needed legal representation for. It was better to do it under a law firm name than it was doing it personally. And all the years that I had this law firm, which was at least 10 years, and it was in Malibu, California, I would say that maybe 2 or 3 people, or maybe one, wrote in saying that they wanted, were looking for, interested in a position. And I remember one guy walked in with his resume and was a local attorney and wanted to work, and I'd never hired him, and I always regretted doing it because he had a great resume and would have been helpful. And there was another one I actually did hire that was working at Pepperdine, but that particular guy, I remember, so only a couple people ever, in the history of having this law firm, ever applied, and I remember the people that did. And it wasn't because, it was because I didn't have, I'm talking about when I didn't have openings, it just kind of wrote in and so forth. So that's very, very powerful. If you write in, you send a letter and you apply someplace, and I always recommend sending a letter and not just an email, because emails can just be deleted. People will remember that. And, another thing is if you're local, so I don't know what, market you're in, but if you're in a smaller market, like, when I say a smaller market, I would say, a market of like, maybe 25,000 people or 30,000 people live. Yes, you can show up uninvited to employers and just say you wanted to introduce yourself. You're an attorney. You would, love it if they, if they ever have any opportunities. Here's my resume. People like that kind of stuff. I mean, it makes them feel important. And that would be a good way to get a position in a smaller market. It definitely works. The next question is, how do you knock on doors during quarantine time? And the answer to that is you can send letters and you can email and write and so forth, and that will work. Okay, the next question, let's see here, is in a tough legal market, how do you strike a balance? This is a good question, by the way. Between only taking a job that will lead to something and risking letting your resume gap get so big that might ordinarily be interested, the firms might want to take a chance on you because they think you might be doing something wrong with you. Okay, so in a tough legal market, there are excuses, and people will understand them in the future for not taking the best jobs. In my opinion, if you do take a job, you want to commit to it and you want to find the good in it and do the best that you can, and really come up with a good reference. I had something happen to me once that was kind of remarkable, actually. A woman that had been in a very wealthy family in Italy, and living very well, and had a husband that was a successful dentist. Decided she met a man on a train, and I was living in Pasadena, California. She met a man on a train in Italy, and spent an hour talking to him, and then they started writing and decided that she was going to leave her husband and move to, and she'd been running a family business, and move to Pasadena, California to be with this man. So she showed up with no money, having left her husband and nothing. And 3 or 4 days after, leaving her husband, and decided she was going to be independent and make her own money and not have to rely on this man, and told me she would work for me, but only for a year. And, and then she would talk to me after she'd been here for a year. So I let her work for me and I hired her, and she was one of the best employees that I've ever had work for me. And because she did every possible thing that was, you could imagine, including cleaning my house and everything, even though, she, when in Italy had, staff in her house and everything, and she just was incredible. And after 1 year, she came to me and she said, I'm done, and I'm going to do something else. And she went off and ran a restaurant chain for this, very wealthy man, and ran all those restaurants. And I was extremely impressed with her. I mean, I admired that when she came in, she did a really good job. Later on, I helped her find another position, and she came in and did the job and committed. And because she committed, she was the kind of person I wanted to do everything I possibly could to keep on. And incredibly, she'd worked for me for, I don't know, not for a lot of money. I mean, maybe $15 an hour or $20 an hour when I hired her from Italy. And, and I think, I had offered her, I don't know, like, 80,000 or $90,000 a year after a year, and she still didn't take it. But, incredible. So when you go someplace and you commit, and you show, but she was so valuable. She looked out for me. She watched. She hardly spoke English, but she just very, good. And she's very happily married and just a great person. So the point is that, you commit to wherever you're going, and you do the best possible job you can, and you impress the people around you. You impress your employer, you impress the people you're helping, and you put everything you have into it, because people notice that. I mean, I know one guy, this is kind of a funny story, but he had an offer from, this is during a recession a long time ago, from Morrison Forrester, I think, when he was a summer associate there, and then he had an offer for them when he graduated from law school. But then a recession came, and one day he opened his mailbox, and there's a check for $30,000, and that said, if you cash this check, then you don't have to start with us, and if not, and you can find another job, and if not, we're deferring you till, I don't know, the next year, and we may have an offer for you, we may not. It's your risk. And so he ended up taking the job offer, or taking the check and cashing it, and spent weeks looking for a job, or months, and finally found a job with an insurance defense firm, and where he was given, I don't know, a couple hundred cases his first day, and no training, and started that job. But what he did is he decided, I'm going to make the most of it. He put everything he had into it. He did the absolute best job he could, and then after doing it for several years, he was in trial one day against a major law firm, Quinn Emanuel, and he was up against a partner, and the partner was so impressed with what a good job he was, and how committed he was, that they offered him the job. And so he went, literally like overnight into the big leagues, and by committing to something and showing and doing his best. So do the best you can wherever you get a job. Hope that it leads to something, and I think there's just a lot of strength in committing, like the woman that came to work for me, and also like this guy did. He did the best he could and made the most of it, and that's what you need to do too. Okay, is there a good way to improve my interview skills? I think that's holding me back to getting hired. Okay, the best way to let me just say, I just ended this job. Okay. The best way to improve your interview skills is really to be enthusiastic about the position that you're interviewing for, and to be as enthusiastic as possible. You need to look your interviewer in the eye. You need to learn about the employer, and you need to kind of get yourself psyched up. So you need to learn about, what it is you're going to be doing. I think one of the things that when I interviewed for a position after clerkship, I did much better in my interviews than when I was in law school. And the reason is I knew what I would be doing. I knew about it, and I could talk about the work. And so understanding the work, I think, is important. And, having a lot of enthusiasm for the work, and a lot of, eagerness to do the job. And I think that's something that holds a lot of people back, in their interviewing. And that's really the best way to improve your interview skills. And I I did do a presentation about interviewing a couple of weeks ago, and I would review that. And then I also did several articles. I've also written a book called Top 23 Interview Tips that I think you can find for free, probably online. And I would review that and just keep showing up for webinars and learning. Thanks. Okay, I've been looking for a law firm job for several months, and I'm worried about having a big employment gap on my resume. Is it better to take a non-law firm job or stay focused on getting a law firm job? So that's a good question. So I don't know what your background is. If you're in a litigation background, it's never too difficult to find, you can apply to all sorts of clerkships around the country in smaller courts in different types of areas, and that can be very helpful. There's lots and lots of clerkships and government positions where you can get legal experience, and you can actually do clerkships at kind of any point in your career. You can do them if you have 5 years or 10 years, and it never really hurts you to do a clerkship. You can do state clerkships or federal clerkships, and lots of people do that, and that can be helpful. You can even do that sometimes as a corporate attorney, but I wouldn't recommend it. But the big thing is you can always find a law firm job. You just need to be more aggressive in your search and look at more places. And you need to look at places that don't have jobs. And I've also done a presentation about how to find jobs, which I think you can find online, and that hopefully will help you as well. Okay, let's see. As many questions as you guys have. These are all great questions today, by the way. I really I'm impressed and appreciate such good questions. Okay, would your advice be for someone just beginning their career and rather agnostic about their practice area? You can apply to firms and just be kind of general that you're applying to them, and you don't have to commit to a practice area. One of the things that I would say, and it's important to understand, during bad economies, litigation typically does better than corporate. Corporate a lot of times will come to a complete standstill during bad economies, and it becomes very hard to find corporate jobs and get experience. It's like that in every recession I've ever seen. There was one in late 2000 and the dot-com boom, another in 2008, and it's always what happens. And so you're going to be better off trying to do litigation related things in a bad economy. But at the same time, if you're agnostic about your practice area, you should try to understand, what interests you and where you think your skills lie. So the thing is, some people are right-brained or left-brained. If you're more, like math and science and, technical type thinking, then you're probably going to be better off in a transactional practice area, which would be corporate, real estate, something along those lines. If you like reading and writing, and that's kind of where your interest lies, then you're typically much better off doing things like litigation, employment, and practice areas like that. So, but you need to think about what interests you. You need to think about the kind of courses that interested you and the type of work that interests you, because you need to be using your mind in a way that you get a lot of positive feedback in. Because if you don't get positive feedback from the work you're doing, or you don't get joy in the work, then you're not going to do well. So you need to kind of think about where your interest lies. I always like, things like English and, political science and things, and love to write and argue. And that to me, litigation, which is so much fun, and, something I really enjoyed, and I could always consider doing that. I mean, I go back to it now. I mean, it's not realistic, but, at the same time, I liked it. So you need to like what you're doing. Okay. If a firm rejected you in the past, would you recommend resubmitting your resume to the same firm, assuming you really like them? Absolutely. You can apply to firms as many times as you want. I mean, you can apply to the same firm, once every few months if you want. I mean, I don't know that I would recommend that often, but yes, you can reapply to firms, and there's different HR people. They may not even remember you. I mean, I've placed people before that have applied to, several firms, and then I worked with them and got them offers at the same firms that initially rejected them. So you can definitely apply to firms again, and it's a good idea too. I mean, law firms, everything you have to think about when you're looking for a job, everything is like kind of a moving parade. By moving parade, I mean, law firms are at different points in time, are interested in people or have different needs. And so it's, you can always apply to places at different points in time. And a lot of times, like I just placed someone, or I didn't, someone in our firm just placed someone, yesterday, and that person had not, had applied, at the beginning of the year, and then all of a sudden had, interest in them, months later. So, it's just the way it works. And so, yeah, of course you can reapply. Okay, let's see. What's the best way to find out the salary expectations of a certain market, whether it's a small, mid, or large firm size? That's a great question. Honestly, there's no way to really understand the salary expectations or what a certain market can pay without talking to people. Every law firm is different. You can, a lot of times, one of the best ways to think about it is if the law firm is consumer facing, meaning it's representing people, then the salaries are going to be lower. The closer you get to, things like, doing work for, consumers without a lot of money, the lower your salary is going to be. The closer you get to doing work for large corporations that can kind of write endless checks, the larger the salary is going to be. So you need to just understand, like, what kind of clients the company or the firm represents. So firms that represent, large national companies will typically have the highest salaries, and ones that represent consumers, because consumers can only write like little checks at a time, or individuals will typically pay the lowest salaries. And so that's really the way to think about it. But, you could be working in the middle of Ohio and be making the same salary as a firm, in New York, if you're working for a major firm, like Jones Day, for example, or Squire Sanders, or you just don't know. I mean, the larger the clients, the more the firm will pay. And there's great firms all over the country. So, and a firm could have 3 or 4 people in it, but still represent, major clients. Or it could be a top boutique firm and still represent major clients. So you just need to understand about that. Okay, this is another great question. These are all, like, I'm just so amazed by these questions today. Some of the best questions I think I've ever answered in one of these webinars. So thank you for answering such great questions. How do you reach firms who are not actively hiring? The way to do that is you just apply to them directly, and you tell them you're interested in working for them. You can write, most firms will have on their website tell you who to apply to. If they don't, you can just apply anyway. Law Crossing also has a thing called Law Crossing Archives, where they show firms that have had openings in the past, and you can apply to firms in your practice area. But you should just be kind of marketing yourself to all the different places, in your market that you can possibly find, and that will be, that's really the best way to get a job. Places that have current openings, places that have past openings, and just contact them. And the person to contact is typically the HR person. You can also contact people that may have gone to your law school. You can also contact people that are head of your practice group. Okay, let's see. True that a foreign lawyer without a license to practice law in the U.S. might have a chance of getting hired as an in-house counsel, but having virtually zero chance to be hired by a U.S. law firm. Bottom line, passing the bar in any U.S. state would be a must for starters in terms of finding a job in the legal industry in the U.S. Would you agree? Yes, you have to pass the bar in a state to be an attorney. Most in-house counsel will also require you to have passed the bar, but you can waive in as in-house counsel. So for example, if you pass the New York bar, you can work in a company in California by becoming admitted just by getting something from the bar just to be in-house counsel. But yeah, you need to have a job. You need to pass the bar in order to be an attorney in the U.S. And LLMs and so forth get hired all the time, but it is difficult. Okay. When seeking employment in your specialized practice or expertise, what activities are suggested in order to ensure that financial application obligations are met? Well, you need to try to find someone that pays as well as as you can. I mean, that would be, you want to make sure that the employer, pays. And so, yeah, I don't, if you are taking a summer job, you don't necessarily need to get it paid. Certainly my first summer job, I didn't get paid, but you do want to make sure you get paid. Okay, so. The U.S. law firms also have different jurisdictions qualified attorneys in their U.S. office, and these attorneys are well qualified and experienced in that jurisdiction, but not have U.S. qualifications in Europe. No, I think you have to be, in order to practice law in a law firm, unless you want to have a different type of job, law firms do require that you have the bar, and unless you want to work as a law clerk, which you can. But you can't work as an attorney without the bar in a law firm. Okay. Are law firms promoting business development using management qualified professionals for business development across multiple jurisdictions using business strategy, CRM? Do they rely on business traveling for business development to pay conferences? No, so law firms do have business development people in them. A lot of times they're not attorneys and they don't need to be attorneys. That's a great question. If you feel like you have good business development skills or that's something you're interested in, that's definitely something you can do. Okay. Are these webinars available on demand? I'd like to continue reviewing information as needed. Yes, so you can join OR, which is at this website, or.com. And all of the webinars, there should be several of them, are up there that you can watch as needed. And there's a lot of them, and there's a lot of information. I mean, today was just a very small slice of the kind of information that's on there. I recently passed the bar, but have not had any clerkship experience. Well, I was in a part-time law school program and held a full-time job in human resources management. Should I apply for clerkship or volunteers opportunities first to gain experience, or could I market my HR experience when applying to a firm in the employment law field? That's a great question. Yes, you can use your HR experience. People that have been in HR are, great candidates for employment, for labor and employment jobs. You could do litigation. There's all sorts of things you could do. I would recommend, definitely, but starting to apply for positions and trying to get, any type of, entry-level legal experience you can. Okay, next one. I've heard from many mentors over the years it is virtually impossible to get an in-house position if you have not worked in a law firm first. Is there merit to this theory? Is it possible for a new grad to get into this practice if this is truly my end game? And how should I navigate getting closer to that goal rather than waiting several years before moving in-house? Okay, so that's a great question. Yes, you can get an in-house job directly out of law school. As a matter of fact, I know someone that went to work for in-house at a major company right out of law school and became general counsel several years later. So that's definitely something that you can do. And it's not unheard of. But one thing I would say is that one of the reasons that your mentors are telling you that it's better to work in-house in a law firm first is that most major companies, and it's not all of them, but they hire people to be general counsel and so forth that have made partner in large law firms first. And or it doesn't even have to be a large law firm, in a law firm first. Law firms typically provide better training. You learn how to do work for paying clients. You learn how to get work done quickly. There tends to be a lot of quality control and the way that work's taught to be done. Larger law firms will, instill different types of quality in the work. You'll be around a tribe of people that have, certain ways of thinking about the work. The quality between at certain law firms and the way attorneys think and do work is predictable, and they know what it is. And once you get that training, your training really starts when you get out of law school. So that's why people want you to get law firm experience. And so, anybody that's willing, and judges do that too. If you work for a judge, they will give you that type of experience. But, in most cases, unless you have a really good mentor in-house, the quality of in-house attorneys is really kind of a crapshoot. No one knows if it's really good or really bad. And whereas different law firms will give you, certain types of training. The idea is if your goal is to move in-house, then you're better off getting that experience, some law firm training before you do it, because you're going to have a longer career in-house. There's an article I've written on BCG called "Should You Go In-House" or something, and you should read it because there are certain drawbacks to working in-house, that you should be aware of before you do it. Can be a great career, and people like getting on the business side of things, but it can be, there are some drawbacks sometimes. Okay, I get the sense you don't look well on insurance defense jobs. Do they not pay well? Do they overwork you? Your earlier example took a job with an insurance defense firm. They threw 100 cases on training. Is that typical? It's not that I don't think well during insurance defense jobs. I think insurance defense is a great practice area for litigation. And it's something that a lot of people enjoy. The positives of insurance defense are, attorneys will get to go to court a lot. They will get, you get a lot of experience. A lot of times you'll get a lot of deposition experience. You'll get, but the idea of insurance defense is that, when you're working for insurance companies, depending on the type of insurance defense work you do, they pay very low rates because they just have all this work that's constantly coming up. And as a consequence, the quality of work can suffer because you can't spend a lot of time on the matters you're working on. And so, and that's why this guy got like 100 cases and no training. And it's not that insurance defense is bad. It's not, there's absolutely nothing bad about insurance defense. Working in insurance defense in a large firm or being a partner there, you can do just as well financially as you would do in a large law firm. So there's nothing wrong with insurance defense. As a matter of fact, some people may prefer to be in insurance defense because they want to get all this deposition experience and they want to, go to court and they want to, get exposed to matters right away. But at the same time, it's not like there's just different types of work. And so in a large law firm and very, good boutiques and stuff, the work is going to be very plodding and, you're going to move slowly. You're not going to take anything for granted, and you're going to, have a lot of time and clients that are willing to pay a lot of money for you to do a lot of research and so forth. And that's not necessarily always the case with insurance defense work because there's just so much stuff to get through. And that's all. So no, and by all means, no, I don't think badly of insurance defense. As a matter of fact, I think there's, it can be a very lucrative and also fun practice area, especially if you want to get courtroom experience. The problem is because of the habits you pick up working in insurance defense, a lot of times the work quality, the work product won't be as good. There'll be, like a lot of typos, a lot of, things that are just kind of thrown together, and the work, because you don't have the time, isn't as good, and the training's not as good because insurance companies aren't paying for that. They're paying for like high volume. They just want to get cases done as quickly and as cheaply as possible. Okay, you mentioned how employers react to because of maternity leave situation. What if it occurs later in my career and the reason is because of the role as a caregiver for an elderly parent? Yeah, I mean, that's the same thing, and that's perfectly fine. If you have a role with a parent or something, I think law firms, don't necessarily look as negatively on that as well. You can always take a break. They just don't want to see too much of a break. But yeah, and I think law firms will, react, and employers will react just fine to that if you put that down, as long as it's not, for years. I mean, they don't want to see your skills become rusty. Okay, and then there's some more, chats here. There was, what's the best way to find out? Okay, let's see. Some of these I already got. Let's see. Okay, so this is from an attorney with 20 years of experience with firms and experienced with lots of in-house experience in corporate, and experienced a bad fit situation due to reorg and changing focus. Needs of legal department, left the in-house position with mutual agreement as to fit, started a solo practice, business isn't efficient. So what does the attorney need to do to look for a job? What is the key to success in getting a job? Okay, well, that's actually a great question, because one of the things that does happen when people take in-house jobs is that there are a lot of reorganizations and CEOs change and the legal department change. And when a CEO changes in a company, which could happen every 6 months, I mean, depends on the company, then a lot of times they'll throw out the old legal department and bring in the new people to make them comfortable. So that can, in a lot of cases, end up harming you. So, but if you became a solo after leaving an in-house position and it's not working, then my goal would be, to apply to, more in-house companies and, with your background, and try to find something similar to what you did in the past. That would be the major key to my success. And I would review also, if you go to OR, you can review, the work that I've, done, the presentations I've done about finding jobs as well. But if you have all this in-house experience, it's definitely going to be attractive to someone else. Okay, do you have any advice to attorneys to take executive management training offered by Harvard to build management skills in addition to attorneys? I know that Harvard has some great programs. I thought about taking, one of their executive training programs once that was expensive. I mean, back then, I think it was, wow, I mean, I don't know, $50,000 or $60,000 for like, couple months or something, or a month. I don't remember. Yeah, 3 weeks. I mean, it's just, but yeah, they have great programs. The advanced management training program is very good. They have some really good programs there, and I know a lot of people have benefited from it. But at the same time, I don't know why you want to take executive management skills, but I think learning personal skills is very important, and also developing yourself as a person by learning about people, and and that is important. Management is important for attorneys that are running law firms, and management is a skill that you just continually develop over time. There's one attorney I was talking to the other day, and I was very impressed with him, and he's had a great career. And one thing that he does is every time he's exercising, he listens to like some sort of book on tape or something. And anytime he is, doing, document review or something, he's listening to book on tape. And he says that, that extra 100 hours of learning or whatever he gets, or 300 hours of learning, even if he's only picking up 50%, it's making him more and more successful, which I really like. And then another thing that he said to me was that he did something else that was really cool that I liked. Well, I mean, I think that's one of the main things. And then I had an experience once where I was actually going to go to Stanford Business School, and I got into the school and I went up to do orientation and everything. And then at the same time I was running this company, and I thought, all this time away would be difficult, and I didn't know if it was a smart thing for me to do. And then my wife said to me, she's like, you can, if you educate yourself, like you can learn all the stuff that they're teaching on your own, and and maybe and that will help you just as much. And so I did. I threw myself into educating myself about everything I could about management and business, and it did help me, and made me much more effective at work. One thing I will say, though, is that I didn't get the benefit of the context there. And as I'm sure you're aware, lots of people come out of Stanford and do very well, and that was probably, a mistake on my part not going there, because I would have been exposed to their ways of thinking. I would have watched them in their careers. I would have been more successful probably, and been able to do more to help people. So going to something like Harvard is good. Anything you can do to expose yourself to other people. There's a program called Vistage, which is where you can get together with executives. There's also something called Provisor, Provisor, which is supposed to be really good. But anything you can do to expose yourself to other people and learn and have them, question you and see things in you that you may not be seeing yourself and help you is very good. Or executive coaching is good. But that's a great question. This is just really good question. I love all these questions. Let's see. What would your advice be to someone who's not practiced law full time in about 10 years? My skills are rusty and like to go back to practicing law. Then you should go back to practicing law. You should try to get a job with a law firm or some other type of employer. You probably can. If you can't, you should try to go into something that you want to. To get experience. Right now, trust in estates law is booming. You can figure out trust in estates law fairly quickly by studying it and putting in clients. I don't know what your practice area is. We can always open up your own practice. I'm saying if you open something with that, you'd probably be very busy very quickly. And starting your own firm, most people that do it do not regret it. But you should study up on, search engine optimization, how to write articles to get people to find you and how to get linked and, so people find your firm when they search for people like you online. And, but if you want to go back to practicing law, I'm sure whatever your practice area is, there's someone that will hire you. And it's very common for people, especially mothers and so forth, to take time off, even 10 years or more, and then come back. And that's something you can do. Okay, I'm having a difficult time getting a job. Would you recommend starting your own firm so the ball is in motion? Yes, I mean, starting your own firm is always a good idea. You need to, like I said, get the business though. And in order to get the business, you need to find out what's in demand in your market. For a short time, when I was in a law firm and I was so unhappy and I wasn't 100% sure I was going to do what I'm doing now. And I opened up my own practice that in an office. I rented an office. I actually never went and worked in the office a single day, but I rented an office and started advertising this little law firm. And I never started because I was doing this, but I got so much work just by having an office and calling myself a law office in San Marino, California, which is where I lived at the time, because all these people that were local there were giving me work. And incredibly, by just giving away cases, my first, couple months of these people that were approaching them, and I was making money. So that there's a lot of possibility in having your own firm. People can do very well at it if you're doing the right thing. Okay, let me see. Follow up. If 10 years is too long to go practicing law, do you have any other career suggestions? I have a lot of career suggestions. One of the career suggestions that I have for attorneys that they do very well at if they commit to, and if you want to go into another field, I don't think 10 years is too long, but I've seen so many people do well in real estate. I've seen, people do well in all sorts of professions, kind of like that. And, anything to do with sales, I think that attorneys do very well because they learn how to sell themselves. Everyone in this call that's still here, I mean, if you think about it, you've been listening to how to sell yourself for a while now, a couple hours. So it's really something that attorneys are good at, and I'm sure everyone on this call is good at. So, and I think that's all the questions. So I really appreciate everyone listening today. I hope that was helpful. And we'll talk next week. Thanks.